They took 5 and got 5.
Well, we got D's, yes.
According to Andrew Morton, feelings of inadequacy would trouble Diana for the rest of her life.
She was a very bright girl, but it wasn't until towards the end of her life that she became more comfortable speaking to intellectuals. She always felt very intimidated by meeting intelligent people.
When you asked me the question...
As the conversation with Sedlin continued, it veered from one subject to the next. Each new topic offered a potential insight. One minute they talked about the latest book on her nightstand.
It's called How to Heal.
The next minute, how it was her sister Sarah who was supposed to win Prince Charles's heart.
My husband was supposed to be her boyfriend.
Supposed to be, but you don't know?
No, they never slept together.
Right.
That's what she found so odd. My sister saying that.
Yeah, right.
It was in the midst of her discussion about her own relationship with Charles that Diana turned the conversation in a surprising direction. She brought up a subject which, at the time of the interview, hadn't even been whispered about outside the palace. Diana confessed that 4 years after she married Prince Charles, she fell head over heels in love with a married man. An encounter that had a tragic ending. 28 minutes into this first interview session with Peter Sedlin in the fall of 1992, Diana took the conversation in a new direction. The topic was breathtaking when you consider Diana was both a married woman and a princess speaking indiscreetly inside her palace walls.
I tell you, one of the biggest crunches in my life, which I don't find easy to discuss, was when I was 24, 25, I fell deeply in love with somebody who worked in this environment. And he was the greatest friend I've ever had.
She was quite honest, it seemed, with you about her feelings for someone who worked inside the palace.
Yeah. She needed somebody who would let her be herself, who would look out for her.
Diana didn't tell Sedlin the man's name, but she was talking about her bodyguard, Barry Manicky. In 1985, 7 years before she sat down with Peter Sedlin, her 4-year marriage to Prince Charles had all but broken down. She suspected her husband was secretly seeing Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana, then 24, had begun to show interest in the 38-year-old Manicky.
Father was wandering around trying to see him. I just, wore my heart on my sleeve. I was only happy when he was around. And then...
So you had an intimacy,
yeah,
which you weren't getting.
Sedlin asked Diana whether she thought of the bodyguard as a kind of father figure.
Yeah, I suppose you could say I did, yes. I'm sure I did. I was like a little girl in front of him the whole time. Desperate for praise. Desperate.
Diana confided to Sedlin that as she became closer to Manicky, she even half joked about running away with him.
I mean, I was quite happy to give all this up. Well, all this. At the time, it was quite something to have all this. Just to go off and live with him. Can you believe it?
Well, one can.
And he kept saying he thought it was a good idea too.
Were these idle fantasies or signs of much deeper, more intense feelings that then became physical?
The same as they have been sexual.
No.
There was not a romantic relationship?
There may or may not have been, but that's not what she said. And in many ways, I don't need to know. It wasn't the most interesting thing about her sex life, I'm afraid.
Whatever the nature of Diana's relationship with Barry Manicky, newspapers have reported it was a full-blown love affair, though Manicky's wife says there is no proof. Gossip about the Princess of Wales and her bodyguard spread through the royal household like wildfire.
They all got so difficult, and people got so jealous and bitchy in this house, and eventually he had to go. And it was all found out, and he was chucked out.
It wasn't clear to Diana what her husband knew about her relationship with her bodyguard. But after Manicky was moved from protecting Diana and dismissed from royal service a few months later, Diana got the shock of her life. While she was riding in a limousine with Charles on the way to a premiere at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival, he turned to her to tell her about an incident the previous night involving Barry Manicky. Charles was casual, but to Diana, the news was an unbelievable bombshell.
And Charles said to me that he was killed in a motorbike accident, and that was the biggest blow of my life, I must say. That was a real killer.
Diana said revealing the news in such a casual way on such a formal occasion was a particularly cruel and callous move by her husband.
And Charles thought he knew, but he never had any proof. And he just jumped it on me like that. And I wasn't able to do anything.
Crushed as she was, Diana still had to put on her happy royal face for the cameras at Cannes.
I just sat there all day going through this huge high-profile visit to Cannes. Thousands of press. Just devastated. Just devastated. Because, you know, I wasn't supposed to mind as much as I did, if you know what I mean. But then when I got out of the car, no.
You showed nothing.
On that night in question, when you look at the pictures of Diana at Cannes, she looked as though she didn't have a care in the world. She was radiant, she was all smiles, and this, I think, is one of those central moments in Diana's life. She finds out that the man that she's infatuated with at that time has died, and yet she's able to project this fairy tale image of the glamorous princess.
Diana said her devastating emotional pain over the loss was soon followed by suspicion, and then she said something even more extraordinary.
I think he was bumped off. But there we are, I'll never know.
She did say something that you didn't follow up on, and I'm wondering why you didn't. She said that she thought that Barry Manicky was bumped off.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get the feeling that she fundamentally believed that he'd been bumped off. She had a doubt. She wished that people would talk about it. It was more about somebody close to her being taken away.
But Diana apparently couldn't shake off the nagging doubt, even though she'd already been told her suspicion was probably unfounded. The year before she sat down with Peter Sedlin, Diana had asked Andrew Morton to investigate Manicky's death.
She always felt that some unseen forces had engineered that death.
As it happened, a journalist friend of Morton's had reported on the accident and had been at the scene.
And he was able to confirm that it was an accident. A relatively inexperienced driver just passed their driving test who had made a mistake, and that Manicky had been killed in this very tragic accident. And I told Diana that. And whilst the logic of it was there, and whilst the evidence was there, she never really believed that.
Whatever happened to him, it was clear from Diana's interview with Peter Sedlin that Manicky haunted her long after his death. She even went to clairvoyance to try to contact his spirit.
I used to have really disturbing dreams about him. He was very unhappy wherever he's gone to. And so I went and found out where he's buried and went to put some flowers on his grave.
Arriving at the cemetery, Diana discovered she was in the right place, but there was no tombstone. Manicky's body had been cremated there, his ashes scattered.
It's just chucked over the ground. That was absolutely appalling, but there we are. I wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
So she laid the flowers anyway.
And the day I did that, the day the dream stopped. It's strange, wasn't it? It's like sort of recognition.
Diana's relationship with her bodyguard may have awakened new emotional depths within her, but it also taught her a harsh lesson.
I should never have played with fire, and I did, and I got very burned.
But getting burned may also have made her tougher. As the conversation continued, she was about to reveal how tough she really was. The 1987 death of Diana's bodyguard, whom she loved so deeply, left her feeling vulnerable and exposed.
I was like a little girl in front of him the whole time. Desperate for praise. Desperate.
And the comfort wouldn't come from her husband, Prince Charles, who had all but deserted her for Camilla Parker Bowles. Now, 6 years into their marriage, Diana yearned for intimacy. She found companionship with various lovers. And of course she had the 2 boys she cherished. Still, she felt more alone than ever in her empty and sterile palace home. As Peter Sedlin saw it, the emptiness she felt echoed the loneliest moments of her childhood.
It was grim, really grim. It was difficult.
The more she spoke, the more Sedlin sensed her fear of abandonment and her desperate need for her father's love. Sedlin told Diana that confronting her past was the first step toward becoming a self-assured and independent woman.
You know, this gap between a child and an adult is tiny. We all pretend it's huge. It's tiny.
As she took him through her teenage years, Diana became particularly animated when talking about Countess Rain Spencer, the stepmother she despised, the woman she thought stole her precious father away.
We all used to look like homing pigeons to him. Lovely house and everything else. Yeah. She moved in. Exactly.
After Rain moved in, Diana's older sisters moved away, leaving 13-year-old Diana and her younger brother Charles to deal with the tension alone on their weekends home from boarding school.
So you kind of were entrapped.
Yeah,
weekend.
we were. And I kept saying to Charles, when we're 16 and when we're 18, we'll build our own lives. That's all I could think about. Our own choices.
The wicked stepmother, as she became known, was nicknamed by her stepchildren Acid Rain. And Rain further antagonized Diana, her brother, and sisters by taking control of the Spencer family estate. Diana biographer Andrew Morton.
There was a huge transformation at Althorpe House. Many possessions were sold off, much to the anger of Charles Spencer and Diana, who felt that she was selling off the Spencer heritage built up over a number of centuries, and she was selling silverware, paintings and other objets d'art at knockdown prices just to raise money.
She was a bully and just didn't know how to treat individuals.
Open warfare raged between the Spencer children and Rain, with Earl Spencer caught in the middle. In 1978, he suffered a stroke.
They say, the experts, they say the stroke was brought on by the tension between the 4 children and the stepmother, which is very true, I'm sure.
At the hospital, Diana says Rain guarded him fiercely through his recuperation, even from his own children.
She wouldn't let us see him for 16 weeks in the hospital.
10 more years of animosity followed, and finally Diana was ready for a showdown. It took place in 1989, on the weekend of her brother Charles's wedding, an event attended by Diana's father, her stepmother, and her estranged mother, Frances.
And my father and stepmother refused to even say hello to my mother. And it got me so angry, the behaviour of these grown-ups, that I ploughed in and screamed at both my stepmother and my father. I said it was very bad manners, they were just indulging in themselves, and this was Charles's day, Victoria's. Do we have to live with the past every time Mommy walks in the house?
Knowing her mother was deeply hurt, Diana decided to finally unleash the anger she'd held in check since her teenage years. Diana, the Princess of Wales, on deck to be Queen of England, one of the most elegant women in the world, was actually about to get physical.
And my stepmother and I ended up having this row, and I pushed her down the stairs, which gave me enormous satisfaction. My father didn't speak to me for 6 months. I had to go back and say, I love you, Daddy, etc., etc. So it was all very difficult that way.
But the arguments with Rain raged on.
I was so angry, I wanted to drop my stepmother of mine because she brought such grief. She kept saying to me, oh, but Diana, you're so unhappy in your own marriage, you're just jealous of Daddy's and my relationship. And jealousy was not high on the agenda, it was behaviour I was after. She said, you don't know how much we've suffered because of Francis. I said, suffering, Rain, you don't know the word. I see suffering of such magnitude in my role that you would never even understand. I really spat it out at them.
Now, how did you spit it out?
I said, we've always hated you. You've ruined our family life. You've done a great job there, Ray. Great job. Made us really unhappy. I hope you're pleased about that.
That sense spilled over after Earl Spencer died in 1992. Diana and Charles Spencer were instrumental in just throwing Rain's clothes out of Althorpe, taking them out of the back of Althorpe in plastic bin bags.
She just, you're very dismissive of Diana, you're so thick. She kept saying, you're so silly. No, but I've got a lot of other things you've never found out. She will one day.
Diana did more than unburden herself. She gave Sutherland glimpses of her real strength. He knew she could use it to make a powerful statement on stage and in life. The princess realized her strength too, so much so that she made a surprising decision just months after talking with Sutherland. After all the years of turmoil, she decided to extend an olive branch to Rain Spencer.
They had this very emotional lunch at Kensington Palace where Diana said, I want to thank you for looking after Daddy, that's to say Earl Spencer, And they embraced, and Diana cried, and there developed over time a very close friendship between Rain Spencer and Diana.
The conversation between Diana and Peter Sutherland had been extremely productive. Now it was time to get to work. Diana was ready to transform herself from retiring royal spouse to formidable public figure. 11 years after her marriage, Princess Diana was determined to recreate herself. These speech lessons and her intense reflection on her difficult past were guiding her toward the breakthrough that would help her speak to the world. When she was finally able to do that, she didn't just change her image, she changed history. In that first conversation in the fall of 1992, Peter Sutherland had been drawing Diana out, listening as she narrated her own life story, the people and events that she thought had led to the edge of a precipice. Now it was up to Sutherland to help Diana create a new version of herself, the princess as mover and shaker, a well-spoken, independent woman using her fame to change the world.
She really, really wanted to deliver speeches better. I mean, it really mattered to her, especially at the beginning.
But Sutherland had his work cut out for him, as these early practice tapes show.
Attempts to understand
Yes.
the origins of addiction.
Yes. Keep going. Now really.
Diana gave about one speech a month, and Sutherland noticed she often had trouble getting her tongue around the words.
Before we recognise alcoholism as a disease, there is an insidious fear.
Insidious fear, yes.
Insidious fear.
Insidious.
Insidious fear.
The key, Sutherland kept telling her, was simply to be herself, the one they had discovered together. Talk to them, he said, like you talk to me. He urged her to channel the same kind of fury she used to confront her stepmother years before.
A key question.
What?
A key
Come on, get
question.
angry with me.
He'd seen the playful Diana that had charmed millions.
Or in question to your...
Okay.
Is that thing on? Hello.
Because suddenly.
Now, he told her, to use that same sense of humor to convey her message.
So what can you, in the media, do to help?
What?
Like it or not, I have been quite a provider for the media.
Yes.
And now I'm asking for your help to reduce the suffering caused by drugs.
Diana didn't always agree with Sutherland's technique, but he kept pushing. The results could be striking.
Get a little angry now with that.
I can't be angry and speak like
Yes,
that.
you can.
No,
Yes, you
it's-
can. I'll show you. Okay, well, it'll start to change slightly, won't it? It's going to change. It won't come out quite the same. We must recognise that people who are HIV positive, and it's
for as long as they can. Yet out of ignorance and fear, they are still being forced to leave their jobs.
smashing.
If we continue to believe that AIDS is someone else's problem, we too could so easily be facing the same devastating destruction.
Week after week, Diana practiced, watched her tapes, and made visible progress.
The more threatened we are, the more we feel.
Excuse me, the more changes there are, the more threatened we feel.
Right, now carry on like that, yes.
Those who become ensnared in addiction are often highly sensitive and creative people.
In the past 12 years,
The princess was becoming a better speaker. Her former private secretary, Patrick Jeffson, recalls, but he wonders what it really meant for her.
She said to me one day, "You know, Patrick, I want to make a real Churchillian speech one day." And I thought, well, that's good, because, heck, you can't do better than emulate Winston Churchill. But what's she going to say? The thing about Winston Churchill was that he usually knew what he was going to say when he made his big Churchillian speeches. What was she going to say?
There were times his methods could be a little strange.
No.
Like the time he told her to pretend to be a prostitute.
I said, look, imagine you're a hooker. You've been there, you've done that, and you are fine. So go and strap your stuff. Sounds funny, silly now, but
Silly, it sounds scandalous. You told her to
No.
imagine that she's a hooker.
it's to imagine you've been at the bottom and you have come out of the gutter and you are fine. And if this wasn't national television, I'd use a couple of other words now to say.
Did you use them with her?
Yeah.
We did all the work, and wow, you came off and that got you through the biggest nightmare you've ever been through.
And she delivered the speech, and she felt very confident. I was sort of in her eye line right down the back. And afterwards, as she went back, I walked back because it was very near Kensington Palace where she gave it. She went back in the big limo, but she stopped the limo, opened the door, kicked her leg out and said, "Not bad for a hooker, eh?" And I said, "Yeah, you did it." And her staff were all going, "That's all."
Did you just say hooker?
Yeah.
The speech exercises, the role-playing, the telling of her life story, all were part of Setlin's effort to prepare Diana for the expanded role she imagined for herself. In one exercise, he coached her in how to do a television interview, for instance.
You don't look at the camera. You wander your eyes around a little bit, but you don't go all over the place because we wonder where you're looking.